Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts or civic leaders to review the morning newspapers, tell us what's happened in their own individual business and their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And if you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Okay, let's meet the panel. Today we have Angharad, who's going to join us a little bit later from the Andrews Property Group. We got Lance Bradley, who's just recently stepped down as CEO of Gloucester Rugby after 4 years at the helm of the club through a very, very difficult time. So we'll catch up with him. We've got Alex Cottrell, manager of the Gloucester Growth Hub and a member of the University of Gloucestershire Business Engagement Team. Welcome to you guys. And finally, last not least, we've got Gareth Fulford, who's the award-winning chef, owner of Purslade Restaurant, a small independent family restaurant in the heart of Cheltenham. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. Okay, guys, we're just going to quickly share the screen, find out what's making the headlines. So let's start off with the eye. World enters era of global boiling. The Guardian. Era of global boiling has arrived and it's terrifying, says the UN chief. The Mirror. The real cost of our throwaway fashion. The Daily Telegraph. Public must be spared huge burden of net zero, warns Blair. The Daily Mail. Harry's hacking claim thrown out by the court. The Daily Express. New pension triple lock threats, says they're accusing the Labour government of, or Labour of. The Times. Migrants set to be housed in marquees for the summer. The Daily Star. How do you sleep? Energy bills rocket as gas profits rise 900%. Centrica makes 6.5 billion. Wow. If only we could all make that much profit, hey? Okay, let's start with you, Alex. Thanks so much for joining us. What have you picked out from the papers?
Well, none of those, frankly. Basically, what I had a look at and what caught my eye is the sort of the ongoing action in the States from sort of Hollywood, if you like. I know that we can see sort of actors are up in arms, and there was a particular piece that I saw about writers, and there was a piece in the news, and it was last night, talking about their fear of losing work through AI. And the reason that sort of struck a chord with me is that that is something very much that business leaders are looking at the moment as well, in terms of as a positive thing as well as a negative thing, in terms of automation, which some people are worried about being replaced by robots. And I just think it's a really interesting topic. Now, in this particular story that I read about these writers' fear of losing work, there was one particular writer who said, look, robots have never had a dysfunctional childhood. And whilst that's probably not a particularly strong barometer for business, obviously what they're referring to there is that they lack empathy. And so how can these chatbots and things like that possibly be able to come up with the creative work that obviously humans do? And I do have to say that, having sort of dabbled with a bit of the old ChatGPT myself, you can start to see that actually this AI, it's probably not that far away from being able to display empathy, which is a bit terrifying. But I think the message that sticks with me is that this isn't going to go away. The bottom line is, the train has left the station with AI. And I think as much as anything, it's about trying to get in front of it, rather than sort of sitting around and going, oh, crikey, what can we do? It does very much still feel like a bit of a dark art, I know, for an awful lot of business people. Certainly, copywriters, PR agencies, marketing agencies, all of that sort of stuff. I was in a cohort, a management cohort, a couple of days ago, where two of the businesses that I was with had talked about how one of them certainly had replaced their marketing agency because they felt they could do it themselves through ChatGPT. And the other one had reduced the fees they were paying to their agency because they realised that an awful lot of it would be done by ChatGPT. So it's a huge topic that I just think kind of strikes an equal kind of blend of fear and opportunity in humans, but in businesses as well. So I have absolutely no answers to this. I just have sort of opinions. And I think it's one of these things that it's like anything else. It's terrifying until we understand it. And I know that as a university, there's a huge amount of work that we're doing at the moment around AI, conversational AI, all of that sort of stuff. So I think it's just sort of a flag out there to say, this isn't something really that we can even be afford to sort of sit around and just be scared of. We've really got to get our heads around what this is and what the opportunities are that it offers. And I kind of think I always go back. I think it was the Army did a big recruitment campaign, and obviously picking up this sort of idea that AI is coming in and robots are coming in. But they did this incredible campaign where the kind of theme was, yes, we're using AI, but we can't do our job without humans. A robot can't do what a human can do. And I think that's the message. And I do think that's where these writers are coming from. They're not sort of saying you can't use AI, but they're sort of saying, can it be an as well as instead of an instead of? And again, I think that's the message for business as well. So that was the one that struck a chord with me yesterday.
We've actually done it. Last week we talked about AI again, and someone suggested actually off air afterwards that I could replace 2 of my staff by using AI, which I don't actually see myself. You are right, by the way. I've dabbled with it and had a look at it, because I think we've all got to understand. I think people like Gareth are going to be safe, because a robot, maybe a robot could rustle up something, but not as good as you could, Gareth. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that, Alex. We're going to go over to you, Lance. Okay, what have you picked out from the papers or the media today that's caught your eye?
Yeah, hi everybody. I've actually been away for a week, so I've had a relatively limited exposure to the news deliberately, I have to say. But one of the things that really struck me was Sinead O'Connor passing away. She was obviously unbelievably talented and apparently very troubled, but I still vividly remember the first time I heard her when I was at university all those years ago. There was a show on Radio 1 in the afternoons, and I can't remember who hosted it, but they played new music, and the guy said, "Oh, we've got something really special for you here. It's a new singer called Sinead O'Connor." And he played one of the songs from the Lion and the Cobra album, and I literally had to stop what I was doing and listen to it, because it was so striking. It was so different from anything that I'd heard before, and I kind of immediately went out, back in the days when you had to go out and buy albums or cassettes, went out and bought it, and that was what I was listening to. And I think it was my final year at university, and that's kind of what I listened to. So it had a really kind of strong place for me, and it just seemed so sad that she should die at such a young age. I think she was 56.
And she really struck a chord with many of us, didn't she? And I think also the look, the fact that she shaved her head. I remember seeing her on Top of the Pops for the first time. She looked very different. A lot of the other women, let's be honest, were all glammed up, and the guys were wearing makeup just as much.
Yeah.
She really stood out, and I think that is the thing, isn't it? For it, not just her voice, her look. She stood up for something, stood up for herself.
I think it was everything, and she, she wasn't afraid of controversy, and she famously tore up a picture of the Pope on TV, and not at all afraid to express her beliefs, converted to Islam later in life, and had lots of troubles. One of her children, I believe, committed suicide a little while ago, and it's just. It's so often the case that kind of brilliance goes along with so much trouble. But
would you go away, Lance? Sorry, would you go and buy her last album now? Would you go and think, actually, I'll go and try it? Listen to a few more tracks.
Yeah, I did actually. It's when I heard the news that I downloaded a few of her albums that I'd not avoided, but just not really got to listen to listen on the plane home yesterday, and that's what I did.
Right. Yeah, I think I'll probably do exactly the same. Thanks ever so much for that insight. It's brilliant. Gareth, let's bring you in. Welcome to the show for the first time. Okay, what have you picked out from us from the media?
So the stories I've picked out are all quite interconnected, really. So obviously everybody's seeing what's going on around the Mediterranean at the moment, with the fires and climate change. And then, obviously these fossil fuel companies reporting their profits yesterday. So Centrica I'll talk about, and British Gas, that's the one I picked out in Punchline. But in The Guardian yesterday was saying about Shell's profits, $5 billion for the last quarter, which is astronomical by anybody's measure.
Let's bring it back to you, actually, because you must make your blood boil, because we're talking about British Gas, 900%, £900 million profit, whatever, 900% profit rise. Shell as well.
Yeah.
But a kitchen, the costs have gone through the bloody roof. It must make your blood boil.
It does make my blood boil. You know, big business absolutely raking it in at the moment, and the little man basically is struggling to survive. So yeah, it's very difficult to accept these massive profits. I think what really caught my eye about the Shell profits, what's going on in the Mediterranean, is they've also just announced that they are rolling back on their greener drive. So they had said they were going to reduce every year for the next decade how much petroleum and everything they extract. They've now decided to roll back on that, and they will keep producing the same amount as they are, or more even, over the next 10 years, which I think, when you look at what's going on with climate change, for them to be saying that at the same time as they're posting record profits, I really don't think is the way we should be going. You know, everything I've been seeing this week, I've got 2 young kids. It's really worrying for the course we're heading in, really, I think, with the climate. But like I say, as the little man, what action can you take to try and change things? It's very difficult.
You can actually not buy petrol from Shell. Next time you go past, you go to a different garage, you know, and if we all drove past to a different garage, or somebody who perhaps, you know, has more of an economical, or, you know, more of a green agenda, maybe that's the way to go. Gareth, thanks ever so much for that. We'll come back to you in a second. And Angharad, great to see you. Thanks ever so much. I know you just pegged it to the shops to get the papers. Great to see you.
I did, yes. I'm so sorry that I was late. I did a mad dash to Sainsbury's to get some papers, so I'm here now. One of the stories I picked out today, so I've got the eye, and one of the stories on a slightly more positive note than what Gareth was mentioning, is that they've done a story about whether this is the turning point for mortgages. So as a estate agent, obviously this is something I track and something I'm heavily interested in. And there has been 5 banks that have reported that they are pricing their mortgages down. So the average rate in comparison to May at the moment is 6.83%, and in May it was 5.26%. So we're still way ahead of where we were in May, but some of the banks have brought them down to 6.14, 6.15. So is this the turning point for mortgages? Are we starting to see them coming down? Are we seeing banks starting to price more aggressively? Because at the moment, what estate agents are seeing is that we have a lot of available stock, and because of this uncertainty with mortgages, the stock isn't shifting as quickly as we would hope. And I think that's from people wondering, you know, are these mortgages going to keep going up? Is now the right time to buy? Should we hang on? Should we wait? So I'm taking that as a real positive, and hoping that they continue going down, really, so that we can get people moving again.
I mean, it is a worry, isn't it? And a lot of people are, you know, coming off their fixed term mortgages. It's September, October, isn't it? It's looking at 2.5 million people are supposed to be coming off that. And of course, you know, the cost that if it goes up, you're talking some of the prices are doubling, aren't they, from what it was? And of course, that's going to affect restaurants. It's going to affect entertainment, all sorts of industries.
Yeah, I think it affects everyone, doesn't it? Because if people have less disposable income to spend, if a huge chunk of their income has to go on their mortgage, then you're right, they're gonna stop spending in restaurants and shops. If rates continue to rise, it's really worrying. So it's a good sign that they're starting to come down, hopefully, and hopefully that continues, which will be good for everyone.
Okay. What else have you picked up? Got anything else there?
Yeah, so there was also a smaller story about the daily huff and puff could cut the risk of cancer. And I'm interested in this because I listen to a fair few podcasts, and I was listening to a podcast literally last night, and it was it's a Diary of a CEO podcast with a chap called Dr. Lieberman, and he was talking about the benefits of small bursts of exercise. So this sort of goes in line with this article, really. And what I thought was really interesting is that he was explaining that human beings haven't evolved to sit down for long periods of time. And that hunter-gatherers throughout the day would previously do lots of long-distance exercise, and they would sit for small amounts of time, and then they would get up. And he was basically saying that if you are at your desk for long periods of day, there's wonders that you could do just from getting up and having sort of a 2-minute walk around your office just to get your heartbeat up again, and that it actually long term it could do wonders for your health. It can reduce the risk of lots of diseases that we associate with old age that aren't necessarily to do with old age. It's just because as human beings we start to slow down in old age. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. That I was literally listening to something about that last night, and then there was an article about having short bursts of daily activity to really improve your health.
There was a thing in the paper the other day actually that you should do the plank, or you put your kids to as well. I thought that was rather interesting. Not that I did it this morning, mind you. The way I get my heart racing here is because I work from home now, is I run up and down the stairs to go to the loo. But anyway. Thanks ever so much for that. Thanks for picking out those stories. Okay, Alex, we're going to go back over to you. Let's talk about the Growth Hub. If you want to explain very quickly about the Growth Hub. Now, the thing about it is that the Growth Hub is connected to GFirst LEP, but it's not anymore because you guys are moving in with University of Gloucestershire. Is that right?
Well, I see. We track back. The Growth Hub in Gloucester has always been part of the university. So the Growth Hub team at the University of Gloucestershire are university staff. We've been around since 2014. So that has always been the case, but it was a joint venture between the university and the LEP. So the LEP, it's kind of like we've always had two parents. And then obviously since 2017, obviously the Growth Hub network grew. So we now have all the outstanding Growth Hubs around the county, each of which has a partner. So for example, Cirencester Growth Hub is owned by RAU, Stroud Growth Hub is owned by SGS, Forest of Dean Growth Hub is owned by Vantage Point. So that's the way that it's always been running. So we have these incredible partner institutions that effectively are the owners of the hubs, with the LEP sitting as sort of an umbrella organisation across all of them. I think where we've been over recent months, there's obviously been a lot of talk about LEPs and the future of LEPs, and I think that's still kind of, up for discussion in planning. I know that they're waiting on some news. But because of UK shared prosperity funding, without wanting to chuck too many acronyms at people, Growth Hubs were all successful with the LEP in securing funding for Growth Hubs for another 2 years. So I think one of the first messages that we always want to get out, and I know the LEP would support us, is that even though there might be some uncertainty around LEPs at the moment, hopefully not, but Growth Hubs are here and Growth Hubs aren't going anywhere. So that's point one. I think point two with Growth Hubs in Gloucestershire is, we are all still here. We're all still offering funded business support, fully funded business support, even though the funding landscape, has changed significantly since we came out of the EU. The great news is that we all are still able to offer funded support for growing Gloucestershire businesses. So regardless of which Growth Hub you choose to go to across the county, you will get access to free business advice, free one-to-one consultancy, access to free events and workshops. There's co-working spaces, networkings. We just recently in Gloucester had our second networking breakfast. Now, we hadn't done networking breakfast since 2017, I don't think. And we ran one back in the summer, and we sort of May, and one in June. And we were astonished. We had 90 people turn up at 7 o'clock in the morning. Even I was struggling to get out of bed, and I was delivering it. But we had another one recently with 60 people turn up. So it's just fantastic. So Growth Hubs are still absolutely central to helping the economy grow and thrive in the county. And we're still here. Doors are open. Come in and have a chat.
Was it free, the Growth Hub? It's quite fun because I just want to bring Lance in actually very quickly, because Lance running a business club for the rugby club in Lance, and for a while it was successful, but it's hard to keep that momentum going to get the businesses there, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, sorry, Lance. I was just going to say, just to not look like we're eating someone's lunch, but basically the reason that we can do them free for businesses is as well because we tie them in with our Help to Grow management program, which we're delivering through the university at the moment, which is another 90% funded program for business leaders. So because we're able to kind of use some of that funding to kind of pay for a bacon sarnie, it means that we can still do those for nothing. But I was a regular attender at the King's Home Business Breakfast. They were brilliant. They're a different league.
I love the way you said about free lunch, but go on, lads. So now you know where your punches went.
We only started doing them in blooming May. It's like, no, you're fine.
And it doesn't really matter, to be honest. I mean, we had things that we wanted to achieve with our business club, and it was primarily to get local businesses involved with the club and to help them network and really to say, look, you can trust these people, because if they work with Gloucester Rugby, you know that they're still going to be here for, if you want to use them for something, and that you can trust them because you're going to see them at the game. So it's it was a slightly different agenda. But you're right, Mark. Initially we got lots and lots of people, and towards the end it was becoming more difficult to think of new ways to attract people.
And it's
difficult.
Business people are really difficult. It's very difficult. Thanks so much for that, Alex. I'm going to go over to you because we only got so much time, unfortunately. Lance, it's fantastic that you came. I just want to say what a great job I personally feel that you've done, and I know you've got lots of messages as well. 4 years at the helm of Gloucester Rugby, over COVID. I mean, that must have been tremendously difficult, and you had to make some difficult decisions. There was advertisers on your back, there were games not being played. How the hell did you cope with all that, mate?
Wine. No, thank you. That's very kind, Mark. It was challenging, and when I joined 4 years ago, I wanted to do something different, and I hadn't quite expected that 6 months later I'd be stood in front of 50 elite athletes telling them that they all needed to take a 25% pay cut because the organisation wouldn't survive if they didn't. So it was challenging, as it was for restaurants and loads of businesses. It was tough, but I think the club came out stronger afterwards. We were incredibly well supported by our sponsors. Not a single one asked for money back or anything else. They were like, without exception, fantastic to the club, as were the vast majority of fans as well. So it wouldn't have happened without that kind of support. But the club did come out stronger because it takes a lot of time to plan to put games on. It's kind of that's what the club does. So when you're not doing that, it gives you time to do. It's hard to say, let's look at the positives of COVID, because obviously the negatives were overwhelming, but you can only play what's in front of you. And when what's in front of you is no games, you do have time to do things that otherwise you wouldn't have. So we actually got the club in great shape, and the financial performance has been improving pretty dramatically each year since COVID. So it was challenging, but you always, like in any business, use that as an opportunity where you can.
Because you made those difficult decisions, didn't you? Let's be honest about it. We touched on it before. Steve Bussey was the chef. I know him personally. Yeah. We were in the Air Force years ago together, and you had to depart with that kind of contract. There were a few other people. I suppose that's what you need to do in business, isn't it? But you changed the food completely.
Yeah, we did, and Steve's a great guy and had done a great job for the club for a long time. But the margins that the club was making were very low. And when you're looking at how Gloucester Rugby is a business that doesn't need to make profit, but it does need to make money to be able to invest in the team and in the facilities and everything else. And certainly during my time there, we always paid the maximum we could under the salary cap, and that takes that's a lot of money. That's 7 to £8 million a year. So you've got to maximise everything to be able to do that. And we spotted an opportunity with the food to take it up market, and that's what we ended up doing. So we did take it up market in some of the lounges, quite significantly up market, and because we brought it in house, that also quite dramatically improved the margins as well.
Now, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to maybe grab you another time and do another interview about the rugby club, about the COVID. But I've got to ask you, what's your plans now? Because you kind of took everybody by surprise by stepping down.
Yeah, I know, and it was it was a hard decision because it's a great club, and I'd really enjoyed my time there, but I felt I'd done what I could in the 4 years that I'd been there. I haven't got anything lined up. I did get a few quite interesting calls on I think it was a Friday that it was announced, and then I've been away for a week. So one of the things I'm looking at now is what's next. I'm not going to rush into anything. I'll see what comes up. If I can stay local, I'd love to do that, because I very much enjoyed doing some of the work that I did in Gloucester and Gloucestershire. So if I can keep doing that, and I'm genuinely excited about what's happening in Gloucester in particular, but in Cheltenham as well, and around the region. I think there's some really exciting things happening. So if I can stay and be part of that, I'd love to do it.
Well, I hope you hang around as well, Lance, and hopefully have a beer sometime as well.
That'd be great.
Thanks ever so much for that. Gareth, let's go over to you, because there's a nice link actually between the two of you, obviously from the hospitality trade, for what Lance was doing to you, and running a restaurant, because let's be honest, it's a difficult job. We talked recently about a letter that you wrote to Alex Chalk. Do you want to just explain the reason behind that and why we had that conversation?
Yeah. So wrote a letter to Alex Chalk to trying to express the difficulties that the hospitality sector is facing at the moment. Obviously, the cost of living crisis is affecting everybody. I spoke about mortgages earlier, but that coupled with energy prices and food inflation at the moment is absolutely astronomical, much higher than the headline rate of inflation. So we're really feeling like a perfect storm of issues against us, basically, and trying to highlight that to government, because I really don't feel, and the sector as a whole doesn't feel like the government's listening, basically, to the situation we're in at the moment.
So tell us about your restaurant, okay? Because obviously you've been going for a little while. It's fine dining. Have you had to increase your, close more often to make it work? Are people still coming out? How many covers does it have?
I mean, we're quite we're well established. We've been there a number of years now, and Cheltenham is reasonably affluent compared to a lot of other places around the country. So we're certainly, we're quite fortunate in the position we're in. But even with that, we've had to reduce our opening hours. We're looking at staff levels at the moment, because there is people have got less money in their pockets, haven't they? So the first thing to go when people, are cutting back is that discretionary spend, whether it's shops or going out for dinner, or it's more important to put food on the table at home, isn't it? So.
I mean, you talk about staff levels, because the thing I know, obviously I'm an ex-chef as well, to try and, if you can let someone go, to try and get them back, or try and get someone of a equivalent, good at customer service, or all those, it's difficult, isn't it? It's hard to find.
It is difficult, and again, that's an issue the sector struggled with, and since Brexit, that's exacerbated that. We work hard to retain our staff. We kept everybody all the way through COVID. With the help of the furlough scheme, and we did eat at home boxes as well. We pivoted business so we could still operate through those. 10 months out of 2 years we were forced to close for. We try and retain the staff wherever possible. But ultimately, you need people, bums on seats, in order to pay the staff. So.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I do. You're flickering screen, so I'm going to leave you there for a minute.
Okay.
Thanks ever so much for that. Let's go over to you, Angharad. Obviously, you're now working at the property, not the property centre. I'm very, very sorry. The Andrews Agents. Andrews, how's it all going?
You got me a new job then, Mark.
I know, sorry. I'm going to promote you as well.
Thanks. So from CGT to Andrews, and it's going really well, really enjoying it. We, across the UK with estate agents, letting agents, we're still fighting in a difficult market at the moment. On the estate agency side, we're still seeing a massive amount of listings coming to the market every week. House prices, we haven't had this massive drop that the doom people keep talking about. It hasn't happened. If anything, prices are holding. So I saw a stat recently that the average house price is being listed this month at just 2,000 more than this time last year. So there's no drop. They're not rising as quickly as they were. As we were coming out of that pandemic, we had stamp duty holiday. Prices were rising insanely. So that has slowed down, but they're still going up, which is great news for homeowners. On the letting side, we're struggling on the letting side with a lot of legislation being piled on landlords, a lot of impending changes coming, which I know landlords are very cautious about. There's the rental reform bill on the horizon. There's changes to EPC regulations. So we are struggling with landlords looking to sell. So they're obviously adding to those sales properties we've got available. And this is happening across the UK. This isn't just for Gloucestershire. Because landlords are starting to think, is it safer for me to just take my money out and have that in the bank? We know that we've got some better savings rates going on at the moment. So it's just about keeping on top of that, really, keep educating landlords that it is a good time to be a landlord. It is good to have your money invested in properties. Rents are going up. There's still a huge amount of demand out there for tenants. We can still put a property available, have over 150 inquiries overnight for it. So yeah, it's an interesting market we're in at the moment, but letting agents and estate agents at the moment have had to go back to basics, really, and really, especially on estate agency, really work their applicant lists. Whereas I think before the last couple of years, you could put a property on and it would sell pretty easily.
Yeah, it's like you've got to fight for the business now. It's as simple as that. But I've heard through the grapevine that the value for rental and the value for housing and property in Gloucester, the return of investment is actually much better nowadays and much bigger than Cheltenham, actually.
Yeah, I think in our area, so in our county, Gloucester has the biggest yields for landlords. So if I ever have landlords come to me and say, I've got some money and I want to invest, where should I buy? I always direct them to Gloucester. Great yields in Gloucester. Rents are going up. House prices aren't going up as quickly, so they can really get some good return back on that, on their rents. So I think that's a real positive for landlords in our area. And I'm hoping that will bring more investment from landlords into the Gloucester area.
I think it says a lot for the investment and the millions of pounds being poured into it. There's a really good feel factor out there for Gloucester at the moment. And for the rugby team. Right, that's all we've got time for on our own individual business sector. So let's quickly wrap up. I am running out of time, so let's just go over what we've all picked out for what's you picked out for Punchline. So I'm going to go to you first, Alex. What have you picked out from this week's Punch, please?
I have picked out the news about action on empty shops for Cheltenham. This is talking about the report that was carried out by the Vacant Shops Academy on behalf of the council and Cheltenham Bid, and basically looks at the amount of empty units in an area. The good news is that Cheltenham came out above average, which is fantastic news insofar as they have fewer vacant shops than other parts of the country. But I think kind of playing it back to the Gloucester side of things, it's just a really interesting one for us at the moment as well. We work really closely with Gloucester City Council. We're looking at ways that we can kind of take the Growth Hub into the city and, looking at meanwhile use and empty shops. We also had an incredible conversation with our School of Arts recently this week. And I know some conversations have happened around that about sort of creating gallery spaces, maybe in some of these empty shops in Gloucester, where our students can come in and display the stuff they're doing, kind of really driving that creative agenda. So I'm going to keep it quick because I know we're running out of time. So that was my Punchline story.
Okay, thank you very much. Lance, what's the Punchline story this week?
Well, I'm going to make it very easy because I actually picked the same one as Alex and thought it was great news for Cheltenham, and that it reflects really what's happening in Gloucester and how interesting it is that everything goes full circle, because originally when towns were made, a lot of the properties were houses, and then they become commercial premises, and then they thrive as commercial premises, and the commercial stuff takes over, and then the commercial moves out of town, leaves the gaps, and then the residential starts to move back in again. So it's not really new what we're seeing. It's just kind of coming around full circle, and I always think that's quite interesting.
No, I totally agree. Gareth, okay, what have you picked out for us, please?
Yeah, I think just I originally picked that story as well, but I think it's great for Cheltenham if they can fill these empty units. Nobody likes to see High Street with empty units, whether it's commercial or residential. Is great for the town, basically. Just the story I picked out after that was about British Gas again. Profits are up 900% to 969 million, which, when everybody's struggling with paying their gas bills, seems a bit obscene, really.
Yeah, totally got you there. Okay, Angharad, what have you picked out from this week's Punch, please?
Wow, that must have been a popular story because I also was going to talk about that one. So it's fine. I have a backup. Don't worry. But I do generally think that's a great story, and I'm really pleased that there's going to be some focus on more investment in Cheltenham Town Centre. So that's great. But the other story that I picked out was about the new CEO for Dobbies, because I think Dobbies is a great business. seems to be going from strength to strength. Also has a town centre shop in Cheltenham, which is great to see. And I live in Tewkesbury, so I love the Dobbies in Tewkesbury. I take my little one there regularly to the soft play. So I'm really pleased that they seem to be doing well. They seem to be investing more in our local area. So yeah, good news for Dobbies.
And it's a funny thing about that mini Dobbies, because you know they're going to do a mini B&Q as well. That's a bit of a story. They're going to go mini B&Qs on the high street. That's what we reported on a little while back. Thanks so much for those. I actually picked out Costco coming to Gloucester, a story that we ran yesterday. 11 acres of brownfield site that's going to be regenerated. If you love Costco, it's going to make a huge difference. But the story that really caught my eye was the buses, safe space buses, where you can have a safe haven for women in danger to go on 400 buses around the county. And finally, the other one that took us quite a while to put together and piece it all together was the new quarry plans that could generate £76 million to the Gloucester economy. And that's all we've got time for. So before I wrap up, I'd like to say thank you ever so much to my fantastic panel for joining us today. Thanks to you for watching, and also our brilliant sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's all in the punchline. Bye.